Hi, friends. We are in our next episode. Today, sometimes as we do, we are exchanging the roles. I will introduce my dear friend Karthik Pandit. Today, he is going to speak about one very essential aspect of MSME management, for improvement, because these are very peculiar issues with the MSME, the kind of people they get, the kind of background they get because of the resource constraints. So, how important is the training? And maybe getting some professional services outsourced, so he will throw some light on it, and in different areas of corporate or the business performance. So he will throw the light. So over to Karthik.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, my friend, Dr. C. A. Chaitanya Shah. Today, we thought we will speak about training. Training for an SME, whether it is essential, whether it is necessary, whether it is a wasteful expenditure, or whether it should be done at all. We can divide training in two aspects. The first is the training for the owner, for the proprietor, for the person who started the business. And second is the training for his staff, for his employees, maybe people who join him later. So let's talk of the first training. If you look at a typical trajectory of an SME, history would perhaps agree that a person would have typically started his business as a sole proprietor, then maybe became a partnership, and then is either into a private limited or continues to be a partnership, but qualifies to be called himself as an SME or an MSME based on the criteria that our government has laid for various benefits that are available. Obviously, when he started this business as a sole proprietor or maybe as a partnership firm, he had something special which others around him did not have. Maybe he had a greenfield project, maybe he had connections to start his trading, maybe he had some technological know-how, maybe he's a technologist himself, maybe he's an IT person himself, and that prompted him to start as a sole warrior. And as things improved, as things changed, as a flux of time, growth happened and it grew. So we are taking a case of a person who would have started on his own with some special idea which was different and special than what was generally available, and therefore he made a success of himself. So we are looking at somebody who's made a success of himself based on his sheer hard work, which generally is the case for an SME who is prospered. I'm sure Chaitanya would agree with this
Yes,
this process that typically an SME follows.
that's exactly the background how they start.
Yeah, and they flourish also. Now, having said that, as we said, as when he started, he had some special qualifications, some special knacks, some special avadat, as they say in Gujarati, with him, that made him ahead of the pack. He could claim himself to success, or he could see success. Now, as things grow and people join, the question of the same level of expertise in various other fields would be required. Starting with him, no person can be, and we'll all agree that no person can be good in everything. And what are the everything that a typical small business or any business needs? One, of course, is the business that you're in, the product knowledge, the marketing knowledge, the sales knowledge, the financial knowledge, managing government, managing permissions, managing HR, managing labor laws, managing factories, so many things. That's where the challenge starts. That's where typically we find in our experience that this owner, this entrepreneur, this successful entrepreneur starts lacking in all those things that are required. He's good at few, but is not good at all, which is a normal human thing that anybody would face. Our first proposition would be that the owner himself needs to train himself. And the training could be in the area in areas which are most critical to him. Now, which are the areas which are most critical? Every business is there to make money. Finance, to understand accounting, to understand laws related to profit booking and profit accounting, profit understanding finance could be a very critical area.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Since we come from finance background, we would say that an owner has to train himself to decipher, if you like, understand, start understanding finance, not understand bookkeeping. We are not talking of bookkeeping. We are not talking of simple double entry accounting. We are talking of understanding finance. Finance which makes sense, not for the current, not for the past, but for the future. So all the things that are required to understand and decipher the future is an area that would be required for training. Next would come his employees. As he grows, we assume, and it would be right to assume, that his business activities would increase, his complexities of manufacturing or trading would increase. That is the time when people join him. Obviously, he selects people whom he trusts and who are good. But they also, over a time, tend to slow down on understanding the complexities of business. And as they say, the only thing constant is change in business. And so is it is in all walks of life. So that is where the training to his employees, the training to his colleagues, the training to people who have joined him would be of very essential. Obviously, this involves cost and this involves risk. So let's talk of cost. The cost, of course, is there because you got to impart this training. One is on-job training. Whether do you have the time to impart that on-job training would be a question, because you're already stretched as a businessman, because you're looking to so many aspects almost beyond your reach. Therefore, is to spend money to get your people trained, and the question is, where do you train them and why do you train them? The where aspect is based, of course, based on knowledge and based on some research as to where the expert area is available. But before that, it would be important to realize that you identify the area in which the person needs to be trained. And it is not important in our view that if you have a technician, if you have an electrician, and this training does not apply to any class of people, it applies to all class of people. So if you have a electrician, if you have a workman, if you have the supervisor who's handling his machines, who's handling his areas of logistics, areas of packing, areas related to attending to factory inspector, all those areas will be areas where the person will have to upgrade his skill. And various courses are definitely available. It's a matter of research, and research would help him do that. Obviously, it will involve cost, but this cost would be considered and should be considered and may be considered as retention cost, because these days employee turnover is very high. Now, there's a question, and the question is, do you retain expertise or do you retain loyalty? If you have a very good person with low loyalty, very good person in terms of his technical skill, it's not enough. If you have a very loyal person but not good technically, that's not enough. So a mediocre person, if you like, who's good at his job and a good honest person is perhaps a good mix of a quality of an employee. The training has to be not only once, but it has to be ongoing. So this training leads to employee retention. When you keep good employees, more good employees would want to join you. Also, as you grow, if you induct, if you parachute employees from outside, it is generally found that the parachuted person is a misfit. He is not able to fit into the culture that the organization has set up. Every organization has this culture. Every organization has this culture, and to induct a person into its culture, we are not talking of whether that culture is good or bad, but it definitely has a culture, and rightfully so. To induct a person into the culture becomes a task by itself. A person who has remained with you, who has remained with you because of retention policy that you have as part of training, obviously has fit into your culture. He becomes an asset, or he continues to remain an asset for a long time. So these are some issues which are essential to consider training, and our summation at the position would be, and I'm sure Chaitanya would agree, that the
Yes.
training, yeah, Chaitanya.
Training is absolutely essential, Karthik, the points which you have raised, particularly in MSME segment or the SME segment, where because of the resource constraints, the quality of people which are available, plus the psychology of the owner, he normally prefers the loyal people coming from a known background, So it's very important that they are trained properly. In the process, the advantage is they serve the organization for a long time, almost lifetime. So it's a perfect thing, that is required to be done.
Yeah. And if you were to analyze some good organizations, large or small, I think the survey would confirm and perhaps reconfirm that a continuous training, on the job training, and a training which is not necessarily on the job, but also where a new induction of ideas is happening as a process of training, is a good retention strategy, is good in terms of growth for the business. It's good for the processes that are adopted for the business. Because
And
as I said earlier, only thing constant in business is change.
no, and particularly, Karthik, the way the business ecosystem is changing of late in last decade or so, and particularly last 5 years, one has to remain updated with the various skills which are necessary, particularly on the IT areas. Technology in IT is moving at a pace which is unheard of in the past.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that training is very, very important.
You see, the environment, everybody will agree, and SME especially will agree, is very dynamic. It
Yeah,
changes every day. So the person who is able to meet up to the change almost on a daily basis is sure to be a success. And at the cost of repeating what we said, at the point of laboring what we are saying that if you have to be ahead of the pack, if you want to thrive, the only way to, perhaps the only way, or one of the most important way, is to be well trained, well informed, more than and better than the others who are around you. And that is where you made a success of yourself when you started. If you were not ahead of the pack when you started, you would not have achieved the kind of success that you have achieved now. So it's a question of learning from past, and history, as they say, is a good lamppost, and that lamppost needs to be
exactly.
and that lamppost needs to be seen, heard, and implemented. Having said that,
True.
having said that, we would want to summarize to say and re-emphasize with all the might that training is essential, is not a waste of money, and it is the need of the hour which every owner needs to apply not only for his staff and his colleagues, but for himself also. And that would be a major contributor for his success and for the growth. And it's what every business looks forward to.
Yes, they must take it as a long-term investment. The way we invest in technology or machines or other areas of business, this is also an investment which is important for the long-term survival and growth of the business. So with this, Karthik, we come to the end of this episode. I am sure the listeners and the entrepreneurs and the MSME people benefit out of it and take a clue that they should really basically invest in it for their own interest, for their long-term growth. And we would request all of you to subscribe and maybe contact us on the email IDs and the numbers which are there. And would also appreciate your suggestions or requests regarding specific topics to be taken.
Bye for now. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you again with another piece of episode.